Welcome to Scary Diaries, where the darkest corners of the human experience come to life. Join me as we delve into the most terrifying tales, paranormal encounters, and unexplained phenomena. From creepy cryptids to haunted mansions, each episode will take you on a journey into the heart of fear itself. Scary Diaries? So, if you dare, subscribe to Scary Diaries and join the journey into the unknown. But be warned, once you enter this world, there's no turning back. Today's video is about real Squid Game, which was played in the 1970s and 80s in South Korea in an internment camp disguised as a welfare facility. Thousands, including the homeless, political protesters, and children, were forcibly sent there. They endured forced labor, abuse, and many vanished without a trace. This dark history of South Korea was something that not a lot of people knew about, and the forgotten story just resurfaced recently in the last few years. Did you know that a concentration camp called the South Korea's Holocaust or the real-life Squid Games-like area actually existed? And this is hopefully the last known dark camps, at least in South Korea. The story only became public, and the public was outraged because of these famous documentaries and took on the story to find victims who never talked about this for over 25 years. This is a little 12-year-old named Chung back in 1982. He was just a kid, so bright, super smart in school. During tests, he would always get first at school. Very obedient. He was the only son of the family. One evening he was getting late and Chung never returned home. Come to find out, Chung ended up going to the nearby city with a neighbor. And I sat. In the other series, he was at the arcade room, and it was such a great day for him until the neighborhood man just left him alone for a second when two policemen approached him and asked him, "Why are you here? Are you alone?" The policeman asked him to come with us to the police office. "We're going to take you home." Little did he know that this would change his life forever. From then on, time to time, children would just go missing, vanished, without a trace. This is Miss Lee, and in 1983, she was just 7 years old. Her little brother and herself were out, and again the police would approach them, and they just followed. After being in the police station for a couple hours, they told him that they would take them home, and as soon as they left the station, there was a white van waiting for them. It was just like the Squid Games. When you accept to call them with the card, a van will arrive and will bring you to the games, and they would vanish without a trace. These kids were then forced into the dark van with no explanation, and they realized they weren't alone. There were many other kids and adults, and people just mixed, shoved into this tiny van. When they got to this unknown locations from here, this is when hell started. In it, you would cry, question, or complain. The guards would viciously start beating these kids up. There would be commands. These people would all of a sudden salute, sing certain anthems, and these new people who arrived, they weren't instructed to do anything. If they didn't follow or didn't know what to do, they would automatically get a beating. When they entered this mysterious building, the victims claimed that it really looked like a prison cell. There was heavy steel doors that only locked from the outside, and inside of these long rooms were rows and rows of bunk beds. Large pillars of heavy metal sat at the center of the rooms, and the rows and rows of bunk beds were beating the victims, beating them the entire time they were there. It was enough to fit at least from 80 to 100 people. Coincidences? Even more shockingly, they noticed that everybody was wearing the same uniforms, and the uniform color was blue with stripes on it. They were also forced to shave all their heads. Nobody can have long hair. And they were strips of their name and their identity. Now they were being called by numbers, just like the OG Squid Game resemblance. They had to respond to the command officers as if they were in the military, and there were also divisions like in the military. One woman, who was only 7 at the time when she was taken away, even remembers that there were kids and babies younger than her. These buildings were also barricaded by high concrete walls, and on top of that, even if you tried to escape, there would be guards standing within each other, barricading the whole area. Again, this show res Remblabank. So the Squid Games, how that specific location was just hidden in the woods. These areas were hidden deep, and you would literally have to go hunting or know the forest area in order to catch this place. The crazy thing is, this area was like a little town. They had factories, a church, schooling, a barber place, and a bathing area, and there were a couple different locations throughout South Korea. They didn't care if there was anything off rhythm, or you decided to resist, there would be severe punishments. One person who got out of these bulleting says that they were also given only 30 toothbrushes for 120 people to all share. They also received this one clothing to wear throughout the whole year. Now these people's daily task was do pretty much forced labor throughout the whole day. There was many facilities and factories, and you see these photos like these kids were the barber man. And one of the factories that Jung worked at was the fishing rod factory. Many others were forced to work for long hours, and kids working these complicated jobs and working with sharp needles and objects in detail, but it's very similar to what you guys have heard about what happened in World War II concentration camps. Jung told at the end of the day, if you do not meet the production quantity that they assign to you, everybody would again get severe punishment. He remembers his whole body just being bloody, and scabs became old ones, and they were cut again and again due to the punishments. And this happened on a daily basis. It was total hell for everyone. They were also given very little food, and everyone was slim, super skinny. People even remember some had to eat whatever they can find, including rats that they found. Now, there was also even a female section, and even worse, there were a lot of assaults. But when females would get pregnant, they remember these doctors coming in and injecting them with unknown substances. And witnesses say that all of a sudden, like throughout a couple days, the female that was pregnant would no longer have their baby. And ass assaults did not just happen to females. It also happened to males as well. There's these drawings of what the victims remember and what they had to go through. And these details of what the victims had to endure is so graphic that, they themselves also, most of them don't talk about it because it is horrific. So what was this place? What is this random hell place? Why were all these people being gathered? Was it really like for fun and games? And why did no one know about it or try to save these people? So it turns out this place was called Brothers Welfare Center. It was supposed to be known to gather homeless people who didn't have a place to go, who didn't have families, aka people who were deemed unfit for society. It was the government's program giving these people a second chance, whipping them off the streets, including like disabled people, and putting them into this welfare center where they are supposed to have jobs, they have an education, they go to church, they get food. It was advertised on TV as this amazing place that the government gave as a second chance for those who had no homes. But 70% of these people that were put into these camps weren't people who were just homeless. They were like random people that the police or whoever would just force them in. Like these guards did not care. This happened in front of everybody during the time when they were supposed to go to sleep. He says that it was like a wild animal safari there. There was absolutely no human part of this at all. And people did try to flee. There were many people who tried to flee, but they claimed that actually almost nobody was able to flee because the guards would catch them and soon they would find out tried to flee back. And that's because the punishment was death. I think the saddest part about hearing the victims, Mr. Chung says that when all these things were happening to him, especially S.A., he says that, as an adult now, in a way, feels shame. He feels shameful that he went through this when it wasn't at all his fault. Now, how about the disabled people who were taken there? What happened to them? And the witnesses claim that there was a zone where disabled people were put into, and they claimed that this was literally a zombie zone. They called it the zombie zone literally because the disabled people were actually kept out before the battle started itself. They treated people like retrieval dogs, crying out if someone was being attacked, believing the dogs were in danger. At night, they alternated between the terrifying screams and the galling silence. Drugged up, they were all in like a zombie-like state, and they can't fend for themselves at all. 2 years like this passed, and Chung now became 14 years old. Surprisingly, one day he noticed from far away a very familiar face, which was his own father. So parents of kids like Chung who all of a sudden went missing would be devastated. And when Chung's father found out that his kid was gone for years, he leaned on alcohol. He could not go on with his life, knowing that his son vanished and the police couldn't do anything about it. So Chung's father says that multiple times he went inside the police station, begged for his son to be found. But guess what? The police, looking at Mr. Chung's father and him being drunk and like screaming and yelling, he was also now considered unfit for the society and was forced into this camp. He admits that rather than feeling excited or welcome to meet his father there, he felt ashamed, embarrassed, and especially looking at his father, who had aged so quickly, so much within such a short time frame because of exhaustion. His youthful father was like no longer there. When nobody was looking, Chung's father found his son, and he actually handed him over this old rice cake that he's been saving. And he actually handed him over this old rice cake that he's been saving. This rice cake was given during like a Korean holiday, and only one was given to each person. So his own father, being hungry himself, was saving this for his own son. I mean, it even just shows you how through this traumatic experience and everybody having to suppress their human emotion, that for a lot of these people, that humane part just never was able to be stripped away. I think one of the also sickest part about this was that this welfare center was promoted as like a God-giving place. The owner, the boss of this place, and a lot of these people were portrayed as praying, believing in the word of the Bible. And yes, they were forced to sing these anthems and church choir songs. And these victims say that they were being preached about how this was what God had commanded. So they were literally being brainwashed in every single way that they can. And just to use religion, and God's name and Bible to do these horrific things is one of the sickest part that people just cannot get over. It was December 1986 when Mr. Kim, who was working as a prosecutor, was on his day off and decided to go hunting. He was walking around the forest with his co-workers looking to hunt for things when all of a sudden he noticed a couple people, like from afar. And he noticed that the interactions with these people were super odd. Besides these labor workers, he noticed guards with long sticks and rods just hitting and abusing people. There were also these large dogs that was not leashed and intentionally scare all these labor workers. A short while later, he noticed the labor workers were put into what looked like a big animal barn, and the guards would lock the heavy gates from the outside. He also noticed that some of the labor workers' feet were tied in chains so that they would not flee. Mr. Kim got a really bad feeling and decided to investigate this area. Throughout the investigation in this specific area, I told you there was many different areas, but this area had about 900 kids or minors working in hard labor, with 3,000 more people who was living in horrific conditions. Eventually, Kim found the office where the head leader would be staying at, and he found this big money box or container where he found over $20 million in cash. The welfare center leader was this man named Mr. Park. Now, when Mr. Park was interviewed by Mr. Kim, Park acted super arrogant, and he would not tell anything to the police. He claimed that I can't be investigated, and that's because he was anointed to this welfare program by one of the highest people in the government. And when I mean highest people, I mean the president of South Korea at the time anointed him to this position. So, yeah, kind of, he seems a little untouchable. And when Mr. Park was anointed to this position, the government would give him a lot of money to run this program. Each person that he brought in equaled a guaranteed payment. And also all the labor work that they're doing to create, the fishing rods, whatever kind of factories that all these people worked at, the revenue would also be kept all to himself. I mean, Mr. Park, his words and whatever he instructed was the law here. It got worse from here. The government found out that in 1981 that the next Olympic would be held in South Korea, and decided to start the process of cleaning up South Korea, or beautifying South Korea, so that the country can look pleasing to the eye for all the foreigners that will come to Korea because of the Olympics. Explaining, basically human trash removal. So who would catch these people? It was the police. Each person that the police brought, they would get a certain incentive and points, especially the soldiers. They would get censorious military status and points and certain amount of points meant that you're going to get a certain amount of promotion. And actually on TV, he came out and said that he is not a criminal, that he is being wrongfully convicted. And actually a lot of people kind of agreed with him because they were like, whoa, look at the streets. It's actually clean. There's actually no homeless people or orphans like standing in the streets. Like it actually is cleaning up South Korea. Mr. Kim, being the proper investigator that he was so shocked when he received calls from his higher officials. He received numerous calls telling him to reduce Mr. Park's sentences. It was his higher officials, his boss, telling him to do this. The contest between Mr. Park and Mr. Kim, too. So he had no choice, but he just couldn't believe it because, he lost faith in the justice system because he saw that those who had money and power, especially annoyed by the president, that how can people get away with such horrific crimes? Now, back in the 70s to 80s, the president of Korea was Chun Doo-hwan. President Chun is very controversial. He is accused of doing many horrific crimes himself to the citizens. There was a huge riot in South Korea. He was known to have a military dictatorship. If you watch the drama, Replied 2001 Ragnarok, and you see Sister Bora going to do, there was a huge protest because people were protesting against this dictator leadership. President Chun is accused of doing horrific things, especially to those who went out to protest. So these are young people who went through tortures, if you were ever caught protesting. But he was a very controversial president. Eventually, Mr. Park was sentenced and most of the charges were dropped. I believe he was sentenced for negligence. He only spent about 2 years and 6 months in prison for the horrific crimes against these people. In 1987, when this whole news came out, the camps were shut down. But because this was a program ran by the government, what happened was they just changed the name and location and started all over again. Mr. Chun, when he found out he was going to be transferred to another location, he got a call saying that his father died in this camp. No one knows why he passed away, but obviously it's presumed that he died of exhaustion and terrible abuse. This concentration camp lasted about 12 years, and in total, 7 people were victims of this. After these concentration camps pretty much shut down around 1988, again, like I said, they did change and keep the program just in different names and locations. It is said that this amount of brutality did stop, but there are stories out there that even after this, they had to endure unfair treatments. But the reason why these people were not able to come forward until pretty recently is because of the stigma. They felt as if they will still be treated as the unfit people and be labeled as that forever. And this is true because a lot of these victims who came out after the program shut down in the late 80s, they say that they didn't just return home. A lot of these people who were taken as so young, they couldn't find their parents anymore. They had to stay in other facilities for homeless, or the orphanages. And a lot of them had to be put to mental facilities because throughout all those abuse, druggings, and going through all these trauma made a lot of these kids not developed as a fully healthy, functioning adult. Another man who went to the camp with his older sister. It was only in 2012, 25 years after the incident, when one by one those who survived this camp stood up in front of the courthouse, finally gathering up the courage to protest and get justice. At first, Mr. Han was the first one to speak up about this, and he was literally like one-man protester in front of the courthouse, quote, looking for us to find normal again. Unfortunately, the court or the police, whoever said that the statute of limitation was long over, that they could not do anything about it. On top of that, Mr. Park, the one who was supposed to be in charge, passed away in 2016. It was said that until Mr. Park passed away, he lived as a very wealthy man. With the money that he made from the program, he bought other buildings, and this family is pretty rich. In order to protest, the victims camped out outside of the court for over 900 days, for about 3 years. They have been camping outside to get someone to listen. I want to talk about the lesson entrusted to you. Only in 2020, the court did grant a reinvestigation into the brothers' welfare case that happened in the 70s and 80s. And again, till this day, the victims never got any compensation or support from the government, and they believe they should because the program they were put into unfairly was by the government. And to think that those horrific people who have done this to other people are still alive. Known as Korea's Auschwitz, it symbolized the harsh dictatorship of the time. Squid Game echoes this dark history. It shows how desperate people are manipulated and forced into deadly situations for survival. Both stories reveal a terrifying truth. When survival is the only option, people are pushed to the edge, and humanity is lost. These stories serve as chilling reminders of the inhumane forces that can arise in societies where power and control are unchecked, and how easily people can become pawns in a game they never chose to play. The tragic truth is that the system, whether in real life or in fiction, treats people as disposable commodities. The suffering, exploitation, and loss of life at the brothers' home highlight the extreme measures that oppressive regimes can take to maintain control. Squid Game serves as a fictional reflection of this, where people are forced to play deadly games for money and survival. And this book is written to try to find a lesson, as well as to try to address the situation in a way that resonates with millennials. But the real-life horrors of the brothers' home were far from a game. They were a living nightmare. These stories remind us of the fragility of human rights and the terrifying consequences when they are violated. Hope you like the video. Please subscribe. The channel as it is will boost my confidence, and leave a comment. Take care. Goodbye for now.